Wilkes County area. My own son, Chief Deveraux, is the director of the North Wilkesboro Housing Authority. So, those are some things. William Coles, they call him Billy Coles, who is a very strong advocate of Wilkes County communities, but more importantly, he spends quite a bit of his time, pushing for activities of cultural nature and others.
You see, after the war broke out, of course this was in 41, I was in Fort Meade, Maryland. And from there, I went back to New York to Fort Slocum. And I worked there as under the Civilian Investigating Division, better known as the CID. Yeah. So I stayed there until the war ended, 6 years. And from there, I went into the United Nations. They sent me, in fact, they solicited me to come to the United Nations to the military division. But as things go, when I went there to take over my job with the military division, the man who was in charge of it had just been shipped to Europe, somewhere in Europe. And of course I said, well now, I don't know when he's coming back. Like with the Army, you never know what's going to happen, because they get one in today and ship another one out tomorrow. Right. So I wound up going into UN security. And of course, that lasted over a period of 23 years. But in the meantime, I joined the United Nations singing group. And of course, with that, took me most all over the world. There, I guess, about everywhere except Russia and China. It's one thing that impressed me in England. There was very little coffee. You can't depend on getting a cup of coffee like you go in here, and they will have tea.
Spot of tea.
Of course, tea is in the morning. I was amused at the place that I stayed. Sometime I didn't get in until maybe 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and by 7 o'clock they'd be knocking on my door with tea and crumpets. In Wales, I noticed there that one of the things, everybody seemed to eat butter. Butter seemed to be one of their prime diets.
Did you play the athletics?
No, at that time, I drove the school bus.
Oh, okay.
And lived in Roan River,
That was a long way out.
Long way out, and at that time, we just had one car. That was a pickup, and that was just like pulling our teeth to get his truck to come back up here, But no, I didn't play. I wanted to play sports. I guess it's for a good reason. I drove the school bus.
Well, the first project was the Lincoln Heights Recreation Association. What was that all about? Do you remember?
Betty, that Lincoln Heights Recreation, that brought in, what comes to my mind is a daycare center. And that was, and then the next thing come along with the sewing classes. And Mother's Aid came along as the third group. But let's go back to the daycare center. The daycare center was to be there for mothers like myself who wanted to go to work. And the only way you could go to work is find someplace decent for your children to stay. And so the daycare center had to be. And when I started working for Brock, that's one of the things that came to my mind. I gotta get a daycare center, no, I can't work. So getting around talking to people, low-income people, and talking to them, some of them was having the same problem as well as finding a job. And so we organized the daycare center with mothers, working mothers. And we took the money that we took money and give it to the teachers who were there. We helped some with the food. We brought our own cots. We organized under the Brock agency with the knowledge. At first we didn't have the knowledge of really knowing how to organize. So Brock gave us the knowledge to do all of these things, to organize and to organize it into the area in the way that you want it to go.
Right.
The first week I got was working at Wilkes Tannery. And I worked there. That was my first job.
When you were first having a recollection of Wilkesboro, what were the roads in the town and things like back then?
Well, the road was just common country roads, wagon roads, up mountain, down mountains, through the woods, like that.
When your mother was cooking, did she have a wood stove to cook on?
Yes. And I had the job at home. I had to get up. I was big enough to get a job on the public works. I had to get up in the morning and make fires in a wood stove.
And I might begin by saying that I'm Elizabeth Ellen Ann Parks Grinton. Now that sounds like a lot, but that's what I am. So with the you didn't ask me about my birthday, and this is something that I'd like to tell you that's showing about me, and many people might wonder, why did she do that? Well, I've never been too hot on how old are you, since we already know how old we are. I'm a few months older than you, so that's good enough for me right there, right? A few months? Okay. Elizabeth Ellen Ann Parks Grinton was born in Wilkes County, and I'm the 5th generation down from the slave who was Mammy Judy. So with that, my mother was Josephine Parks Speaks, and she was the great-granddaughter of Judith, and I'm the 5th generation, I told you, down from that. And before I tell too much about that, I'm sure that you want to say who you are before I take up the whole scene and the time, because I'm known to talk a lot.
So am I.
Well, good, get started.
Well, I am Catherine Harris Barber, born of Mary O.B. Harris and Joseph C. Harris, September the 23rd, 1916. And that is the year that Miss Grinton was born, except she was born in May.
Now this is something. They've been waiting a long time to find out, and now they have it.
Now everybody knows.
This is something. Now if you know, really, if I'd known you were going to tell all that, I told him myself. Now here she is. Well, anyway, that's what you have in your mind. Okay.
Now about your.
I'm the 6th generation of Harrises in Wilkes County. I'm a descendant of Molly Harris, who migrated here by covered wagon from Culpeper, Virginia, sometime around 1800 or after that, because her grandson, who was my great-grandfather, was born in 1820. Now, his name was
was Jordan Harris. I never did see him. He fell in the fire and was burned on the day that I was a month old. And Mama was taking me down there for him to see, and met one of his grandchildren coming to tell her that he had fallen in the fire and burned up.
Well, I had a brother that worked there out in the coal field, and they were needing help when I was 18-year-old to work, and he'd come in here and get men, and we'd write a pass. You know, the company would pay the fare to the railroad company, and that's the way I got to the coal field at first. Well, when I first started to work there, it was $3.60, and then later, the second time I went back, it's $4
Now that's a day or an hour?
a day.
Was it dusty back in there?
Lord, yeah.
Had it looked like you'd have died from the coal dust?
Well,
I guess that's where black lung comes in.
that's where black lung come in. You see men come out there, you couldn't tell him whether he's a black man or white man or not, on just by his hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yes, sir.
That was a pretty incredible experience. It's 1 week and it goes by really fast, and it's very intense. And I think, you know, of course, there's a lot of pressure. I think because that was a year where there were more black contestants than there had ever been before, there was maybe a lot of pressure on the 4 black women in the pageant, and that included myself and Suzette Charles, Miss New Jersey, of course Vanessa Williams, Miss New York, and Amy Keys, Miss Maryland, because we were always pushed together, you know, in the press room, and it was like, oh, where's Miss North Carolina, Miss New Jersey, and it's like, okay, Miss New York and Miss Maryland. But then again, in a way, I mean, that can be an advantage or a disadvantage, but in a way, it was kind of nice because, you know, you get a lot of attention that way also. Of course, when you're the first at anything, you always get a lot of attention.
Your family made your own soap?
Yeah, they could, we burnt, they could run lie down. They used to make harmony too, but I wasn't in on that. But they could take hickory wood, we burned that, and save those ashes and put them in a hopper, and put some straw there, and you pour water over that ashes, and it'd drain down through that straw, and had a little trough to run out, and they'd catch it in a pot. They'd take that lye, they called it, and they could boil it, put soap grease, I put soap scraps, stuff in it, and boil it and make soap.
Oh, meat scraps and things like that. And
yeah. Then you could get this, we called it the Red Devil Lye.
Yeah.
You know, and put it in there after that, you know. I've known them to make it out of that. It wouldn't be plumb hard out of that lye, but when you got the Red Devil Lye, you can make just about a hard cake out of that.
Y'all are the last people I know of that's got an oxen that you work, a steer.
Oh, yeah. No.
They hard to see anymore, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't know what to see other than working. That's the truth.
Now, you helped train this one that y'all got now, didn't you? Or you did train?
Most of it, that boy done most of it.
Yeah. You showed him how, though, didn't you?
Yeah. But he got a little at it because he was a little fellow, and his oldest brother, his oldest brother at that time, why, he used them. Why, he'd haul across to town, wood to Cairo, and he just used them like tame the horses, that's all. Yeah, but finally after my brothers married out, they about all got quit making them.
But this steer now,